What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of The Word on Woodward. I'm your host, Daniella. My co-host is Art Regner, and we've got Carley Johnston joining us today, and we have a jam-packed show for you. We're going to have interviews with Robby Fabbri, Daniel Norris. We've got Jim Leland, former Tigers manager, and we're going to hear from Ken Kale and Dan Dickerson as well. To kick off today's show, we're going to get you right into catching up with Carley, presented by our friends at Meijer. Take it away, Carley.
Thanks, Danielle. What's up, guys? It is time for Catching Up with Carley, presented by Meijer. Today, I am joined by Tigers pitcher Daniel Norris. Daniel, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. Thanks for asking. What have you been doing to stay busy and continue to train during this time?
Yeah, we've got a pretty good setup going where we can throw and work out every day, and then usually after that, if the waves are good, I'll cruise over to the east coast of Florida and get in the water for a little while.
All right, we're going to go back to that. I understand you surf, so we're going to touch on that later. But let's focus on baseball. You've had your fair share of injuries. Were you looking forward to starting a new season fresh? Like, how's your body feeling?
Yeah, totally. It's kind of been the story of my career thus far. It's just trying to stay healthy and all that. And it was a struggle for a while, but last year was my first full healthy season, I guess, and I felt super good going into spring training. So it was a bummer to be put on hold, but I feel like I've been doing a good job of maintaining where I was at and getting better.
Love to hear it. What was it that got you into playing baseball?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Anytime I've been asked this, it's weird. Like my dad just had a bike shop growing up. He didn't really play any sports or anything like that. I'm not really sure. I think when I was 3, I got a ball in my hand and just fell in love with it and started chasing that dream from that point on.
And at what point were you like, okay, I'm pretty good. Let's take this to the big leagues?
That's another good question. I don't know. It's hard to judge your own talent, I guess. I think a big thing for me when I realized I could maybe do something was just like how much it kept me up at night. I was always thinking about it, dreaming about it, and I kind of at an early age I realized I wouldn't give up until I got there. So it was just that was kind of my motivating factor, was just the passion for the game that I truly feel like I was born with.
Absolutely. And you were drafted in the 2011 draft. And an 18-year-old kid, hearing his name called by the Toronto Blue Jays, what was that like?
Yeah, we were we were all pretty psyched. It was just kind of was the mark of a dream starting to come true. First step of ultimately reaching the goal of being in the big leagues one day. So it was very exciting, and just really, we all rejoiced. A lot of hard work had gone into it and a lot of sacrifice from my family and my parents. And so when that day came, it was cool, but I definitely, understood that there was a lot more hard work to be done.
Yeah, no kidding. And then in 2015, you got traded to the Tigers. What was going through your head at that moment?
Yeah, I was excited. I love the Blue Jays. I love that they gave me the opportunity at such an early age. But at that time, in my head, I just kind of felt like this was, God's path for me. And so for lack of a better explanation, I was just ready to take the ball and run with it.
Love it. And then fun fact, that year, you became the first Tigers pitcher to hit a home run in his first career plate appearance. That must have felt pretty good.
Yeah, I don't really remember what it felt like. It was sort of an out of body experience. Just, I used to love hitting growing up, and I signed to Clemson to play outfield as well. So getting the bat in my hands again I was really relishing that opportunity. And then I don't know, got a good pitch to hit and put a good swing on it, and the rest is history, I guess.
And when the season starts back up, what are you hoping to accomplish personally?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just taking it day by day. I'm not one to really set out any goals, specifically on stats or anything like that. Obviously, staying healthy is at the forefront of my mind every time I take the mound. But a big thing for me is just training hard. On the days in between when I'm pitching, I think those are just as important. Working hard and checking the boxes of preparing yourself for every opportunity to go out there and play.
100%. And during this lockdown, you've actually launched your own show, The Drip. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know, the PR team with the Tigers, who were great, they kind of reached out one day and was like, "Hey, how would you feel about doing this?" And I was like, I mean, that sounds cool. I'm not sure how good I'll be at it, but um, I'm down to try it." And so far, it's been really fun. We've had a few shows now, and I think it's cool to just kind of keep in touch with a lot of people, and the Tigers fans that are not able to watch us play right now. At least kind of brings us all closer, and maybe give some insight into behind the scenes of what it's like, being in the clubhouse or the day to day as a baseball player.
Yeah, you've done a great job with it. I watched it and I love it. So the name, The Drip, where's that coming from? Are you a coffee connoisseur?
I suppose I am at this point. I mean, I drink coffee every day, so it sort of made sense for me to do that. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's been cool. The drip. I think someone else came up with it, and I signed off. I was like, yeah, it sounds good. It works.
All right, so how do you take your coffee? Now I have to know.
Yeah, just black. I like jet fuel.
I'm the same way. All right, now I also want to talk about some of your other hobbies, starting with photography. What got you into it?
I think art was a big part of my childhood. My dad, he's extremely artistic. He always was, drawing up ideas for bicycles and motorcycles and stuff like that. And then I remember in high school, my sister was, super good at art, and I think she realized at an early age that she wanted to chase art as her profession, and now that's come to fruition for her. So she does a lot of painting, and um, I think in high school, art and maybe English was really the only subjects I was good at. So I liked drawing and sketching, and then when I got into photography, I just really liked um, how it could feel timeless. You could make a photograph really tell a story, and truthfully, they could last forever. And I just like the idea of maybe being able to tell adventure stories or stories about people through the art of a photograph.
Yeah, I'd love to get into film, but one thing that sticks out to me are your portraits. What made you gravitate towards shooting close-ups of buddies and Tiger legends and strangers?
Yeah, again, I think it was just the way my sister's art kind of progressed. She started out just painting a lot of different things, and then really her main muse right now, I guess, is just watercolor portraits. And when I was younger and she was kind of in college doing it, I started really falling in love with her art and how she was able to portray people through a painting, and all of that. And so when I got into photography, I really loved being able to tell stories about people I would meet along the way or anything like that. And also a good friend of mine who was also one of my favorite photographers before we became friends, Ben Moon. He's an amazing portrait artist, and he's taught me a lot about just kind of how that works and the vision behind it.
Okay, and I can't interview you without asking about your van. Seems like your pride and joy. Are you still living in it? Is it still kicking?
It's still kicking, yeah. I've taken it on some pretty heavy road trips that we've had to do some maintenance on it, but I actually got another van for the West Coast in the off season when I'm out in Santa Barbara training. And so I lived in that one for about 2.5 months this off season, but I still have Shaggy for sure. Yeah.
So what makes you live in a van?
I don't know. I think the way that I was raised, we were always super simple, only having what we really needed. And I don't know, when I signed to play pro ball, I didn't really see fit to change anything. So, we grew up outside a lot. My dad had the bike shop, and it was just kind of what we always knew. And I don't know, there wasn't really a specific reason why I did it. It was more just seemed like a lot of fun to me. And yeah, I started doing it in 2011, and just I've kind of been doing it periodically ever since.
I've noticed on Instagram, you include the saying, just keep living in a lot of your posts. What's the meaning behind that for you?
Yeah, so that's kind of a phrase I came across back in 2012. It was a time in my life when it was my first real year of pro ball, and I was struggling really bad pitching wise. And then within the same week, I lost both my grandparents, which was tough. And to be honest, I'm not sure how I found it. I just saw it online one day and read about it, and it's the phrase obviously came from Matthew McConaughey, and he started a foundation behind it. And I kind of latched onto the phrase, when things are going tough and you feel like there's not really an end to it, no matter what, you just keep living. But then beyond that, the foundation is something that I've gotten behind throughout my career. It's just an amazing opportunity for inner city kids that don't really have the ability to kind of go out in nature and play or exercise just being in the city, and so it's more of an after school program that gives them a chance to do all those things that they might not be able to otherwise. And so, yeah, it's an amazing foundation. It's an amazing motto to kind of keep close to your heart. And yeah, it's helped me a lot.
Love it. All right, Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you and yours stay healthy and happy during this time.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks again.
Thanks, fans. Don't forget to tune into the Tigers Instagram every Thursday at 10 a.m. to check out Daniel Norris interview a guest on The Drip. Thanks for watching Catching Up with Carley, presented by Meyer. Back to you, Daniella.
Thank you, Carly. So great to hear from Daniel Norris. He has so many interesting hobbies. It's really cool to hear about them. And Carly will be back with us later in the show, guys. Make sure you're interacting with us on social media. If you have questions on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, anything, both Tigers and Red Wings, Carly will be on those social channels, and we will try to get to your questions later in the show. Now let's bring in my co-host, Art Regner, and get to the Big Three presented by our friends at Chevy. Art, glad to see your face.
Yeah, there was a little doubt there. Sorry about that. I was on a big conference call, planning out strategy for when the sports world's going to come back. So no, but we're on a different little device this time. So I think I actually look clearer. I think it's a little bit better. The hair is still the hair, but it is great to be here. There was some trying moments, to say the least.
Hey, it's okay, Art. We all have them. I'm glad you're here. Let's get into our Big Three with the first topic being the cancellation of the AHL season. And I can't say that this is something that everybody is surprised by. It was something that was sort of expected. But before we get your thoughts on this, Art, let's get some thoughts from Ryan Martin, the general manager of the Grand Rapids Griffins and assistant general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. Carly?
Thanks, Daniella. I'm joined by Grand Rapids Griffins general manager and the Detroit Red Wings assistant general manager, Ryan Martin, following the unfortunate news of the American Hockey League season being canceled. I know that what to do with the AHL season has been in talks for quite some time now. What was the ultimate decision maker to cancel the season?
Well, we have been we've had a number of conference calls throughout the pause, and certainly Dave Andrews and the leadership group at the American Hockey League had been in constant communication with Bill Daly and Gary Bettman and talking to the NHL folks. And at the end of the day, the American League model is a little bit different, obviously, than the NHL at the minor league level. It's heavily dependent on gate receipts, and they just felt that, it would not really be practical nor possible in many cases to conclude the regular season and then play playoffs. And so ultimately the decision was made to cancel the remainder of the regular season and Calder Cup playoffs.
So how much do you think the season cancellation means for the development of these players, especially the younger guys?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carly. With having so many first-year players down in Grand Rapids, certainly as a staff, Steve Yzerman, Pat Verbeek, myself, the player development staff, we were looking forward to watching these players in the playoffs, and that's really unfortunate. Putting aside obviously the health and well-being of the players and the spectators takes precedence, but if you look beyond that to the hockey decisions. Not having the opportunity to potentially play in the playoff games, I think is certainly something that's a detriment to their development. But really, I guess fortunately, I think we're in one of the top two divisions in the league. The American Hockey League is heavily divisional play, and I'd say going back to about early to mid-November, I felt we were in playoff games almost every night. The first 30 days of the season or so, Iowa and Milwaukee kind of ran away with first and second place, and then after that, there was 6 teams that were competing for 2 playoff spots. And when you go 10, 11, 12 games at a time within your division, those games are basically playoff games. So I was talking to Ben Simon last week, and we were remarking just about that very fact. Despite the fact we're not going to be able to play playoffs, I think going back to certainly mid-November-ish, those are playoff type games. So it's great that Sider and Veleno and Michael Rasmussen and others down there got the taste of playing in those types of meaningful games. Although it's not the same as playoffs, there's certainly something to be said for that level of competition night in and night out.
So I'll also have to ask you, how will this affect the Detroit Red Wings team with a handful of the Griffins players having gone back and forth between the 2 clubs?
Well, looking forward, certainly in the short term, if the NHL season does resume, some of those players might have the opportunity to come up and finish out the year with us. From a bigger picture thing, I know our player development staff, Sean Horkoff and his group have been in constant communication with the prospects. We did our player exit meetings back in mid-April, which would have coincided with the typical end of the regular season in the American League, because we felt we wanted to keep these players on an appropriate development timeline so their training would be in line with where it was supposed to be. So I think that's important. And then certainly looking forward to next year, we had great exit meetings with a lot of the young players. I know Mo Sider, his motivation is to come in and try to compete for a spot at camp. Joe Veleno had a really good rookie year for a 19-year-old to be playing in the American League and playing as he did. I think that says a lot about Joe and his future. And certainly, we're looking for him to compete coming into Detroit's camp next year. Michael Rasmussen, who spent the better part of his entire first year in the NHL because we didn't want to send him back to junior. We think it was a really good development year for Michael to be down in the American League. But I know Michael is anxious to try to take that next step and become a full-time NHLer. And then, someone like Lidstrom, the fans got to see come up at the end of the year. Gus played almost, I'd say probably 80% of the games we played down in the American League before he was recalled, and fans got to see him. So, I think Gus is in a good spot to try to compete for a job at a camp as well. So, certainly the young players, the season that they had down there, I think it puts a lot of them in a position to look to take that next step in their development.
Last but not least, is there a message you'd like to send Griffins fans?
Well, just thanks for their support. I think we've got some of the best fans in all the American League. Tim Gortzema and the ownership group of the Grand Rapids Griffins do a fantastic job. They're great. They're great partners. I think we've got one of the best affiliations in all the American League. And, I'm as disappointed as any Griffins fan in terms of not being able to watch the Griffs play in the playoffs, but we're looking forward to rebounding and being back next year, the 25th anniversary season. So we're really excited about that.
Love it. What a milestone. Well, Ryan, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you and your family stay well during this time, and I hope to see you very soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Carley.
Thank you. Daniella, back to you.
Thank you, Carly, and thank you, Ryan. Art, obviously, I want to get your thoughts on this because we both know that it was important to Steve Yzerman for these Red Wings prospects and Grand Rapids Griffins players to play in the playoffs. It was something that he said would give them experience and everything like that. So now that they aren't going to be able to do that, how does this affect them?
Well, I think, it's kind of a missed opportunity. I think the one thing that Ryan has said, over and over, the thing is that they didn't miss much of the season. So they actually got a head start on their postseason workouts and everything. But, you can't beat a playoff run just for experience. You learn how to win. You also learn how to lose. Unfortunately, you learn a lot about yourself. So I think pretty much that's the that's the lesson here. I mean, this isn't much of a surprise, Danielle. I can tell you, I know that talking to several of the Griffins right when this happened, one player told me, and this is a great analogy, I'm not sure what it means, but he said, you have a better chance of having your shoes full of soup than you do us playing another game. And I thought, wow, that's kind of weird, but it's kind of strange. But when he said it that way, I mean, they were preparing for this. I think the problem is the longer they're off the ice, the longer they're not together. That means that Justin Advocator a couple of weeks ago here on the Word on Woodward said, like, we're going to need about a month, and and it's a ticket revenue generated sport. Unfortunately, we haven't seen any plans right now that call for fans in the stands. I think we're all hoping and praying and wishing that does happen. But, I think it's a missed opportunity. The only good thing about it is that these young men are still working. They're working hard. They're doing whatever they can to make sure that they're ready for the start of training camp, to make a run to become a Red Wing. And everybody else is in the same boat. This just doesn't affect the Grand Rapids Griffins. It affects all prospects all over the entire world. But, the Red Wings are, I still think Mo Seider's going to compete. I know Michael Rasmussen, in the worst way, wants to be a Red Wing. We had Joe Valeno on. You can tell the guy's posting Instagram every day of him doing some sort of extraordinary thing, with his hockey equipment. So it's bad. But then again, last year, the Griffins only went 3 games into the playoffs. The first round is 3 out of 5, and they lost to Chicago Wolves. So the experience missed, but I really think the way the Red Wings are under Sean Horkoff, especially Director of Player Development, Ben Simon and his staff, obviously, the will of the player, it's a setback, but it isn't a major setback.
Very well said, Art, and I agree with you there. It is a disappointment to see it happen, but obviously player safety is first, and this does give them an opportunity to prepare for next year's training camp and everything and their dreams of being a Detroit Red Wing. So not all bad in this situation. Let's move on to our topic 2 in the Big 3 today, and this one is the NHL fan voting, the Fan Choice Awards. The Red Wings are nominated for a couple of these guys. They're nominated for Best Player Dog, which is Tyler Bertuzzi and his dog Aspen. They're nominated for Best TikTok, which, Art, do you have a TikTok? I feel like you're a TikTok guy.
I did try to do one actually when I was visiting when Andrew Bossman Christoph, our social media expert, along with Stacy Boss Lady Burlingame, we were in Grand Rapids to do some things with the Griffins, and Joe Valeno did a TikTok, and I tried to do it, and I'll tell you, I don't have any rhythm, so it did not work out very well. But I'm going to do one. I am definitely going to do one, Danielle. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what it'll be, but it will be legendary.
All right, I'm looking forward to that one, Art. Again, the Red Wings are nominated for Best TikTok, and the last one that they're nominated for is Best Building. So go on and vote for the Red Wings to win these awards. You can go to NHL.com/Fan Choice Awards to cast your votes, and that's open through June 1st. So make sure you do that, and maybe the Red Wings will win some Fan Choice Awards. Very cool there. And let's move on to our third topic now, you guys. And this one is the Tigers' new initiative. They are doing First Pitch Fridays. It's amazing. So they're doing a virtual first pitch. I want you guys to get a solid look at it. So take a look at this.
And stepping up to the plate for First Pitch Friday, we got Tremendous ICU nurse Brandon Rennie.
Hey Brandon, great first pitch. From all of us at the Tigers, we just want to say thank you for the work you're doing on the front lines during the COVID-19 pandemic. The work you do and the rest of the health community in Detroit is very inspiring to all of us, and we really appreciate it. We cannot wait to see you soon at Comerica Park. God bless.
We see both of our organizations, the Red Wings and Tigers, doing so much in the community, but what a cool way for somebody in the healthcare industry to be honored. I really like that initiative. First Pitch Fridays.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's cool. I really compliment the Tigers on this. The first pitch is what every baseball fan would dream about, is going out to the mound and tossing that first pitch. I mean, it's kind of like dropping the ceremonial drop of the puck or the coin toss or something in football. These are really big and huge moments, and it's as close as you're ever going to get to the major leagues. And so I really compliment the Tigers. I think it's really, really cool. We know what the healthcare workers have been going through. They literally are putting their lives on the line. And for the Tigers to do that, I like the fact that they toss the ball. They have their own little gyrations. And, you can do whatever you want. Your moment in the sun, which is richly deserved. And then they throw it, and, a Tiger catcher catches it and says something really nice. Really, really a nice touch. I'm looking forward to First Pitch Fridays for a long, long time. What a great idea. Whoever came up with that idea deserves a little bonus in their check. I don't know exactly what that would be. Times are tough, but maybe a pat on the back or something, but that's a great idea. Kudos to the Tigers.
Definitely. And of course, a big thank you to all of our healthcare workers during this time. You guys are amazing. You're the true heroes. And a big thank you to our friends at Chevy for bringing us the big three. When our country is faced with adversity, we find a way to get through it. To help keep you on the road, your Chevrolet certified service experts are here and ready to help. Should you require parts, routine maintenance, or repairs, Chevrolet and its dealers remain committed to your vehicle needs. Visit ChevyCares.com to learn more. Next, we're going to get into our mailbag segment. And for today's mailbag presented by Little Caesars, we are going to bring in Ken Kale. Ken, it's always great to have you on the show. I'm super excited for today. We've got some great questions for you and Art.
Yeah, well, bring them on here. And, the postman always delivers. So let's get her going.
All right. Well, you're ready to go. So I'm just going to give you your first question here, Ken. This one is Chris from Guelph, and he asks, what do you think the Wings will look for in the second round of the draft?
Wow, you're really putting me on the spot here. That's a good question, but it's a tough question as well. And, I think if we're going to have a draft in June, the Red Wings are going to have either the first pick or the second pick, if that's the direction that the NHL goes in. But I think if they do, I think the Red Wings will take a forward. With that said, it's hard to figure out how the Red Wings are going to do in the second round. And again, it's always, to me, it's the best player that's available when you're picking. And also you have to look at the needs of your team. And obviously the Red Wings want to improve their goaltending. They want to improve their defensive core. But I think in the last couple of years, they've drafted some solid defensemen that they hope in the future will be a big part of this Red Wing team. So really hard to determine. I think if there is a defenseman available in the second round, obviously the Red Wings would take a really good look at it. But, Art and Daniella, the Red Wings need some scoring too. They need a center iceman. Mm-hmm. So maybe if there's a player that's on their list that's available in that position, they could look in that player too.
Well, Ken, the good news is that the Red Wings have 3 second-round picks, so they could address a few things in the second round.
Well, point two, and whenever you have those picks like that, you can use them as currency and a deal or two, and maybe for a player or trade up with a selection. So it'll be interesting to see what the Red Wings do in the draft. I guess my concern is usually. When the draft is at the end of June, you really have a time frame as to how you're going to pick or put your players on that you want. And, now if it's bumped up, let's say to the beginning of June, now you're scrambling a little bit as far as getting with your scouts and trying to make everything possible. But, I'm sure Steve Yzerman and his group are nailing everything down. They understand that the draft could be in a couple of weeks, and they've got to be ready just like every other team in the National Hockey League.
Either way, it should be an exciting draft for the Red Wings. Let's move on to question 2. And Art, this one is for you. John from Pontiac asks, today is Lou Whitaker's birthday. Happy birthday, Lou. When is he going to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, first and foremost, we're talking about one of my all-time, if maybe not possibly my all-time favorite Tiger. He's right up there. So I just have to say this. Oh, felt good. Happy birthday, Lou. First of all, he should have been in the Hall of Fame long ago. He didn't even garner the first time he was eligible enough votes to stay on the ballot, which is a crime. It's an atrocity. You have to think the next time he's up for a vote, and I think it's 2 years from now, the Veterans Committee will certainly, do the right thing and put him in, because I think, Alan Trammell went to bat for him. Jack Morris went to bat for him. All former Tigers, everybody that played with him. We're talking about a rookie of the year. I think he was one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball of all time with 2 strikes on him. He was flawless at second base. He and Tram, we all know that they're the longest running double play combination in baseball history. I think if it doesn't happen the next time he's available, and I believe it's in 2022, when the veteran committees, when his name will come up again, if he isn't elected then I'm afraid that it may never happen. But if there's a Tiger, if there is a current Tiger that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, it is definitely, without question, sweet Lou Whitaker. Happy birthday, Lou. You mean a lot to Detroit. You were a great Tiger.
I really hope he heard that response, Art. That was a great response.
Well, that's why I scream Lou. How could he not hear that?
Yeah.
I just woke up my whole neighborhood.
I think my dog heard it too. He's making some noises out there now. He's kind of like, what the heck was that? But hey, everyone heard it.
You know what, guys?
Ken, let's move on to the third question. Go ahead.
I was just going to make a point. Remember the All-Star game Lou was in, Art, and he forgot his jersey, and he actually had to buy one. I think it was in Chicago, and he had to buy one from the souvenir stand, and then they put a number on it at the last second. So he bought a Tiger jersey, and they had to put the number on it. So he was amazing. One other thing about Lou Whitaker, and happy birthday, Lou, is what amazes me about professional players is they make whatever sport, they make it look easy, and that's the one thing about Lou Whitaker. It never seemed to amaze me how easy he made tough plays look. And, when you watch a pro and they do their things out there and they do them just so casually and calm, and they make big plays at big points of the game or hit, like Art mentioned, with 2 strikes, that really amazes me. And that tells me that you're an outstanding pro. And one day I certainly hope that he does make it into the Hall of Fame because he does deserve it.
Well, happy birthday, Lou. I don't know if there's a better happy birthday than a message from both Art Regner and Ken Kal. Let's move on to Ken's next question. Carrie Ann from Dearborn asks, do you think the Wings will ever adopt a 3rd jersey? Ooh, I like this question. Go ahead, Ken.
Wow, that's a tough question to think about it because, I'm not really a big fan personally of 3rd jerseys, especially when you have a team with the history like the Red Wings have, because when you look at their red and white, whether it be the red one at home or the white one on the road, or if they manage to switch it, they are the Red Wings. It's kind of like looking at the Yankees and their pinstripes at home, or the Packers, their green. You just know that that's the team. But I get it. I understand today's world that, 3rd jerseys are really popular with the fans. And sometimes, you have to look at, what the fans time to time. And what I was really impressed with, and I'm not so sure I was a big fan of the Winter Classic jerseys when I first heard about the Red Wings Winter Classic, but when I saw their jerseys and their design, I'm like, wow, that's pretty nice, So I think the fans really enjoyed the Winter Classic jerseys, and it wouldn't surprise me down the road if they do take a look at it. But to me, and I'm old school, I don't know how Art feels or you, Daniella, but I really like the winged wheel on the front. I think they're the only team right now in all of hockey in the National Hockey League that only have 2 colors. Maybe the Maple Leafs are the other team. I thought they added silver in the uniform. But with that said, simple, and I like the simple uniform, and it really looks great.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
follow up with this question. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say,
I was going to ask you anyway.
And you may not know this. I have always heard. So sorry, Daniella. I'm a uniform buff. I have always heard, there's always a rumor that when Mr. Illich first bought the team, that he toyed with adding a 3rd color, and that color was silver. Now, I think that there used to be a sporting goods store in Livonia, and maybe they did this to sell Red Wing jerseys, that said that they had a prototype of what it looked like, and it was like silver on the winged wheel itself, and I've always kind of toyed with that. I don't think the Red Wings should ever go to a 3rd jersey at all. No black, no purple, no Pistons green, or better known as teal, none of that kind of stuff. I mean, the red and white is classic. Leave it as it is, because Ken, I think you hit the nail on the head, is that they've played in so many Winter Classics that there are a lot of alternate jerseys that the Red Wings have. You can go back to the Cougar days and the Falcon days with Detroit and the lines and all that. But Detroit has always, from the moment they became a professional hockey team, they have always worn red and white, period. That's the way it has to stay.
I tend to agree with you guys, actually. I like the red and white. And at this point, like you said, most teams do have an alternate jersey or a third jersey, whatever you want to call it. But the Red Wings have their 2 jerseys, and the winged wheel is so classic. Everyone recognizes the winged wheel. I like the way it is. And, of course, the Winter Classic jerseys are awesome, too. So we've got an array of them. We don't need another one.
Hey, real quickly,
let's get on to
our
last.
When Steve Yzerman took over Tampa, he changed their uniform. Remember, it used to be, it was almost, they had lightning bolts all over it and all that kind of stuff. Steve really, really streamlined it and made it essentially like a Leafs uniform, really kind of blue and white. So I think as long as Steve is in charge, I don't really see the Red Wings going overboard on jerseys. I think, it's red, it's white. If we have a special occasion jersey for a Winter Classic, certainly. But the one thing about the Red Wing Winter Classic jerseys, it's always held true to their tradition, the winged wheel, the city of Detroit, and in the red and white. I just don't see. I like the one where they had the little silver to honor their Stanley Cup champions. Yeah. That was a really cool jersey. But overall, when you look at the Red Wings and you think Red Wings, you think winged wheel, you think red and white, and I could go on forever. So I'm going to be quiet.
All right, well, then we'll move on to the next question because you're going to get to answer this one too, Art, but we're going to start with Ken, and I'm excited to hear your guys' answers to this one because I bet you have some great stories. What is the funniest thing that you've heard during an interview? And that was from Robert in Three Oaks. Ken, you go first.
Well, there was a number of funny things. And, as always, before every game, I get to interview the head coach. And, whether it be Scotty Bowman or Mike Babcock or Dave Lewis or now even Jeff Blashill, it always seems that something funny during the course of the season always comes up. And I remember one particular time when Babcock was the head coach, our power play wasn't very good. And we played the Sunday afternoon National Hockey League game in Chicago. And the game before, the power play was terrible. I think the Red Wings were 0 for 7 on the power play. So we're in the coach's room, and I'm talking to Babcock, and I'm asking him about the power play. While we're in the coach's room, one of the assistant coaches was in the bathroom, and just when I asked the question, he flushed the toilet, and Babcock just looked at me, and that was the play from a game ago. So wasn't very good, and it was at a funny moment. We all got a good laugh at it, but that was one of the funniest things that I can think of that happened while we were doing a coach.
That's a pretty good one, Art. What about you?
Well, I'll say, that just happened in the Supreme Court the other day, too. During the middle of an oral argument, someone flushed the toilet, one of the chief justices, but they're human beings. Anyway, I guess, there have been a lot, as Ken said. I used to do these bits on the radio network on the pregame show whenever there was a holiday. And so for Valentine's Day, I asked the players who was their first love. And then I also asked them, what did they get their significant other for Valentine's Day? And Ken, you might remember this. I had like Barry White underneath. Hey, baby, the legendary, the great Barry White. We had the music. Chuck Miller, the general, produced it. And it's like, hey, baby, make me feel good, And then I've got these Red Wing players who are like, well, I don't know if I want to answer that because, that's kind of incriminating. Like Larry Murphy was all over me, but the best by far was Marty LaPointe. And I said, Marty, who was your first love? Some Jezebel in Montreal. I don't know, who knows, And I go, well, what are you getting, Tanya? Your lovely, because we always referred to her as Tanya, your lovely wife. That's how what'd you get, Tanya, your lovely wife? And he goes, get her? What do you mean? I go, for Valentine's Day. What you get? Flowers, candy? I don't know, Marty. What'd you get her? He goes, I got her nothing. I got her absolutely nothing. She has me. What more does she need? And I started laughing. I go, yeah, that's a good one. I go, but truly, what did you get her? He goes, I'm serious. She has me. And I just started laughing. A couple of the other guys were around. I think with Maltby, Drapes and McCarty, they were always there, always curious about what the heck I was up to. And so, everybody just started laughing because, God is my witness. He was absolutely serious that when you have Marty LaPointe, ladies, you need nothing for Valentine's Day. Well, of course, he's happily married. They have like 4 kids. So, but I just thought, to this day, I always just remember it. I mean, he almost got indignant. It was like, hey, what are you talking about? She gets nothing. She has me. So I said, well, maybe that made Marty a great player. But he had a lot of belief.
That's awesome. I wonder how many ladies out there would be okay with that one, because I don't think I would. I got to get like some flowers or chocolate or something, right?
I don't know.
I remember that
piece. That was Pardon me, Ken?
I was going to say, I remember that piece, Art, and I remember the Barry White in the background, and I remember hearing it and just cracking up because it was one of the best features I think you ever put on the radio.
It was a lot of fun, but Chuck Miller, who's still doing it, the general, I got to tip my cap to him. I mean, I knew what I wanted. I always had the concept down. I'm the great ideas guy, but technically trying to put it together, I have, a bunch of thumbs, I'm just not, it's just not there. So, but that was a lot of fun. Hey baby, Barry White is legendary, just absolutely a legendary entertainer. And, it'd start off real low and then it would build up to this crescendo. Oh, baby, can't get enough of your love. It was just classic, just classic. So, and the Red Wings were really, really good sports about it back then too. So it was fun.
You, Daniella,
those are some great
you interviewed a lot of players. Daniella, you interviewed a lot of players too over the past couple of years.
Nothing too crazy like that yet. I haven't had any standout stories like that, but I can tell you one thing. When I have both Art and Darren McCarty on the set of our Game Day Live show with me, you never know what's going to come out of either of their mouths. So it is the most entertaining interview. Art's laughing because he knows it's true.
Darren is, Ken's talked to him many, many times. You just never knew with Darren, but what you did know with Darren is that it was going to be heartfelt and honest, regardless of what he was saying, and he truly believes it.
Yeah,
he's a man of
conviction. Yeah, you guys are my favorite. I love having him. Well, Ken, thank you so much for joining us today for the mailbag delivered by Little Caesars. It's always a pleasure to have you join us, and you will be back very, very soon.
Sounds good. Always a pleasure. Have a great rest of the day and a great show.
Yes, you too. Thank you, Ken. Thank you. And thank you to our friends at Little Caesars for presenting the mailbag here on the Word on Woodward. Little Caesars proudly introduces their hot and ready pepperoni cheeser. You get a large pizza topped with classic pepperoni, fresh mozzarella, and a toasted Parmesan and Asiago cheese crust for just $7. Try our no-contact pizza portal or delivery from Little Caesars. Guys, we've still got a jam-packed show for you. We're going to hear from Robby Fabbri. We've got Dan Dickerson joining us live, and we will also hear from former Tigers manager Jim Leland. That's our headliner interview today. But for now, we're going to get into Bet You Didn't Know, presented by Motor City Casino. And for this segment, we're going to bring back Carley Johnston. Carley, thank you for joining us as always. You're doing a great job manning those social media accounts. And I got to compliment you. That interview with Daniel Norris was spectacular. So cool to hear about all the other things that he does. It looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. We don't have Carley's feed as of right now, so we're looking to get her back on the line, but we will still get into Bet You Didn't Know, and Art and I will kind of take the lead on this one until Carley pops back in. So, Art, are you ready to talk about the Tigers Classic game that was aired last night? It is Father's Day, June in 2006. And this one was at Wrigley Field against the Chicago Cubs, and the Tigers took a commanding 12-3 victory. The game started off with a bang. Curtis Granderson hit a leadoff home run, followed by Carlos Guillen, who added a 3-run shot at the top of the first. Tigers hit a total of 8 home runs in this game. Art, how amazing is that?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was an incredible game to watch. I actually remember it live. You know, the Tigers and Cubs have a kind of a long history together in World Series, and I can remember back in '84 where everybody was under the assumption the Tigers and Cubs were going to hook up again, and lo and behold, the San Diego Padres were the team that defeated the Cubs and advanced to the World Series. Quickly, I just want to say something real quick. It looked like Ken Kell was on the IR today. I don't know where he bumped his head or something. It looks like he had a little bit of stitches. Still looking good, Kenny. I just want to say, though, hey, he's a trooper. That's a hockey announcer for you. I don't know if many men would have come on with a big gash in their forehead, but Ken, you look good. And secondly, Daniel Norris, modern day Renaissance man. But the thing that I thought that was really interesting is the 8 home run. When you look at it, Carlos, they scored 6 runs off Mark Pryor, who was a great pitcher but had some injuries, and I just thought it was wonderful. They tied a record, the Tigers did, with those 8 home runs. It's a team record, which they also did on the road in Toronto on June 20th against, the dreaded Blue Jays. So, the home runs, Chris Shelton, who, I had a nickname for him, Red Pop, because, he blasted 2, Brandon Inge blasted 2. I just thought that, it goes to show you, and maybe that's why I'm all over Spencer Torkelson too, that the Tigers should draft. I know they used to say, what was the old expression? Chicks dig the long ball. Art Regner digs the long ball too. I can remember those Tiger teams. I can remember Norman Cash, obviously Willie Horton. They had some guys who had a lot of pop in their bat. I've always liked that aspect, iconic home runs from Maglio to Kirk Gibson to what Gibby did. But 8 home runs in a game does not get much better than that. And, and tying a record with 12-3 victory over the Cubbies on the road. There's always a lot of Detroit fans in the stands, regardless of whatever Chicago team they're playing and regardless of the sport. So I just thought that, for me, that 8 home runs really, really, really stands out. And it was good to see Chris Shelton, who, his star ascended so quickly in Detroit. And then it just kind of, which is a tragedy in a way. But what you see in baseball is that, it's almost like, and I hate to say this, and no pun intended, like a one-hit wonder. But to see Red Rock pop a couple of out and break the field was pretty cool.
Well, Art, I have some good news for you and for everybody watching. Carly's back. We've got her. Carly.
All right.
I'm here, you guys. It all worked out. It happens in stuff like this.
We're glad to. Yeah, that's okay. We're glad to have you back, and you're just in time because I know that you had something really cool to talk about this Tigers game and something special about the pitching for the Tigers.
Yeah, something you guys may have missed. Kenny Rogers won game 200, which is incredible. He pitched 8 innings and even got a hit at the plate to help out his own cause in the win. The gambler, as you may say, was a bit of a gamble for the Tigers when they signed him in 2006 at 41 years old. You don't hear that a lot. He delivered with a 17-8 record that year as the Tigers went on the surprising run to the AL pennant. In his career, though, he went on to win 219 career games, which actually ties him with Hall of Famer Pedro Martinez for career wins. That's also more wins than other Hall of Famers Roy Halladay, Don Drysdale, and the Tigers' Hal Newhouser, which is pretty incredible. So props to him.
Yeah, that is amazing. And that game overall was just incredible. And it was the start of the series. I think it was a 3-game series with the Cubs. And the Tigers would go on to sweep the Cubs, outscoring them 26-9. That is amazing. And the Cubs and Tigers don't play all the time. But since interleague play has started, the Tigers have really had their number with a record of 17-8 against the Cubs. And don't forget, 2 World Series wins, way back in 35 and 45. But hey, it's still 2 World Series wins over the Cubs. I think we should schedule the Cubs more often, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a shame because when interleague play became a thing, if you look at it, the Tigers' natural National League rival for some reason is the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I guess they don't have one either because Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are in the the National League. So, but yeah, it would have been nice that if it would have been if Detroit and nothing against the Pirates, but Detroit used to play Cincinnati years ago in that Sandlot basketball game or baseball game, pardon me, in July, or the Cubs, to have that, always have the White Sox and Cubs play all the time in interleague play. But if that could have been the Tigers' rival, just because of the history of the World Series history, and the rivalry between the two cities. I mean, Detroit and Chicago are, every time I go to Chicago, I don't know how you two feel, but I feel like it's just a little bit larger Detroit, maybe because we're all from the Midwest or something. There, the vibe seems to be the same. Maybe Chicagoans are, oh, no way, man. But trust me, it's definitely the same. I mean, when you're in LA, it's laid back and all that. New York is just intense. But when you go to Chicago, and I love all those cities, by the way, but when you go to Chicago, I just feel a kinship there to that city. And when you beat them in sports, it doesn't get any better.
That's true, but it's almost like enemy territory, in almost every sport you have the Detroit and Chicago rivalry. So, it would be nice to play them a little more.
Yeah, but
yeah, Carly, I agree.
When you look at
Red
the
Wings don't
history
get
of
to see the
Detroit,
Blackhawks as much either, is what I was going to say.
Yeah,
well, no, you're
I know, I
absolutely
agree.
right.
That's always a fun game.
Yeah.
The Red Wings bring that up too. That they don't play Chicago quite as much anymore. I think at times, I think we all kind of long for the Western Conference or some of those rivalries. I mean, obviously the East is fine. Look at their division. There's like 4 original 6 teams in their division. So how can you complain about that? But when I look at it, the thing about Chicago always has been, when you look at the histories of the city, I mean, they're kind of similar, hardworking, industrial, Midwest cities. But Detroit's legacy as a city, a major urban area in the United States, can stack up against anybody. I mean, Detroit is, the arsenal of democracy, to Motown, to some great athletes. I mean, it's being a Detroiter's cool, but Chicago's not too bad either.
Not too bad.
Agree with you
but
there.
Not as good as
Agree
Detroit.
with you there. Amen.
Right. So
Amen. Carly, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you, Carly. We'll see you later for Let's Socialize. So make sure you guys are on all of our social media channels, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. That's Tigers and Red Wings. Carly will look for your questions. We will answer those later in the show. And of course, make sure that you're still tuning in because we've got a lot more Tigers talk coming up. Dan Dickerson is going to join us. And we've got a headliner interview with former Tiger manager Jim Leland. So a lot more going on, guys. So thank you, Carly, and thank you to our friends at Motor City Casino for bringing us Bet You Didn't Know today and every day on the Word on Woodward, Motor City Casino Hotel. Now we're going to get into Downtown Hockey Town. Now it's time for Downtown Hockey Town, presented by Labatt Blue Light. And today's guest is Robbie Fabbri, Detroit Red Wings forward. Robbie, so great to see you today. I'm glad that we got to at least see you virtually. It's been way too long.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
We're excited, and we know that these times are, a little crazy for everybody right now. But why don't you tell all of us how you've been spending this quarantine? What have you been doing to pass the time?
Yeah, it's definitely been, a different time for everyone. And, I'm back here in Toronto at my condo, trying to get out as much as I can with the dogs. And that's about it. Other than that, watching some Netflix and, doing some in-home workouts. And, that's about it.
Robbie, how difficult has this been for you? I mean, you've really, you kind of revived your career with the Red Wings, obviously, with all the injury history that to have it just kind of, boom, be put on pause out of nowhere. Has it been more of a mental strain than a physical strain on you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're always used to, being on the go, always in the rink, always, working out and, on the road or, whether I'm here in Toronto and just going to the gym and doing that stuff. So it's a little bit of a different time, but, I think my injuries helped with the mental side of it, because I did a lot of this for, a year and a half when I wasn't playing.
So you made a pretty big impact with the Red Wings as soon as you were traded over here from St. Louis, and you scored, I think it was 2 power play goals in your first game against Boston as a Red Wing. What do you think it was that made you mesh so well with this team?
Yeah, that was a pretty exciting, first game there. Getting a fresh start was huge for me, and I was very excited for that. And to get Bird to assist on those 2 goals was special as well. But it was just such a welcoming group. Right from the get-go, they made me feel comfortable. The team was great, and it allowed me just to focus on getting back to where I was before the injuries.
Robbie, you had 9 total power play points for the Wings this year, 6 goals and 3 assists. When you walked into that Red Wing room, you knew the situation. You're coming from a Stanley Cup champion. You're walking into a team that is through a major rebuild. Can you kind of elaborate your mindset walking in where you knew this? It reeked of opportunity for you, I must imagine. I mean, if you had to leave a Stanley Cup champion, as crazy as it sounds, what better situation than to walk into the Red Wing room?
Yeah, it was opportunity for me personally. That I needed to get my career back on track, and that was the main focus. Coming into the room, and along with doing that was to help this team as much as I can, and get things going, and get along with this rebuild. But it was definitely a lot of fun, and it was exciting for me to get back and playing. And I'm going to repeat myself again, but the group of guys we have in that room made everything a lot easier for me.
So talking about the group of guys that you're playing with, and we all know that it was a tough season when it comes to wins and losses and what was going on with the rebuild situation. But how would you describe the culture of the Red Wings locker room after spending the time that you did with that team?
Very professional. A lot of us have never had seasons like that, or been a part of something like that. But every day you're going to the rink. You're working on what you need to work on, and everyone's mindset was get better each and every day. With whatever we were doing, whether it was just in the gym or in practices or videos, and the mindset never changed throughout the whole year, even though it was so tough. Going game to game. So, that helped out, everyone, stay in the right mindset, and come to work every day.
Robbie, when you look at the situation the Red Wings were in, I'm really more curious that you mesh so well. But I think one thing that we tend to forget, even though you were teammates with Tyler Bertuzzi and won the OHL championship with the Guelph Storm, that there's kind of a pecking order. When you get to this level, when you walk into an NHL room, chances are you're with your contemporaries. You know a lot of these guys just through playing against them. So I guess this was a pretty easy transition for you, where you know Dylan, and you might know Mantha, that you're kind of aware of who these guys are, even though they're brand new teammates to you.
Yeah, the hockey community is small. You get to know everyone through going through the draft. Getting to know Perlini and Larkin, and Mantha, and the Memorial Cup. He was a big name that everyone knew there. Bowie at the World Juniors. So you get to know everyone, through playing with them, and you chat on the ice here and there, and that's the great part about playing hockey. You get to know everyone, and you get to know a lot of people and make new friends, and it's pretty easy for everyone to get along.
As we've talked about, Robbie, you were having a successful season up until the NHL paused this season. And obviously, you got to stay prepared in case the league does come back, which is something that they are trying to do. What are you doing at home to kind of stay in hockey shape, even though you can't skate?
Yeah, it's I'm just in my condo here, so there's not too much I can do. But I was lucky enough to have my trainer here, Matt Nickel, set me up with an assault bike, and got some weights and some bands, and I got myself into a good routine. Doing everything I can every day to make sure I'm getting the cardio and the strength, and I got a lot of time on my hands, so it's not hard to take a couple hours and stay in the routine I was doing before the season canceled.
Robbie, if you've told me once, you've told me a million times this season. You have a little bit of a temper out there on the ice, and I think you've shown it a few times. And Jeff Blashill has always said that when Robbie Fabray is engaged, he is elite level hockey player. But coming off 2 major knee injuries, was it difficult for you to get that edge back, even though you know that that's how you're at your best, that you play better when, you're not the biggest guy in the world, but when you're, kind of playing the rough and tumble game?
Yeah, I've kind of, had that in me my whole life. I've never been a big guy. But, I sometimes I think I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, but no, it's just the competitive nature I've always had, on the ice and with everything. And, I definitely feel it in games. If I don't have that going for me, I don't feel as into the game. And, sometimes that takes, a big hit or getting hit or something like that, just to get yourself engaged into the game, like Blashill said. And, he's done a great job with that with me this year, making sure I don't shy away from that. And, my personality definitely helps with that.
So as Art mentioned, you're coming off of 2 major knee injuries. You've kind of resurged your career here in Detroit. What are your goals as a Red Wing moving forward?
Just to keep improving. There's still a lot that I want to do and a lot that I need to do to keep, getting better and keep getting stronger and everything. And, along with doing that, being part of this rebuild is going to be fun. There's a lot of talent in that room, and, the pieces are going to get put together real soon. And, that's an exciting way to look at it.
Robbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're an unrestricted free agent whenever that's going to happen. Usually it would have been July 1st this year, but who knows? You might be playing, hockey for the Red Wings on July 1st. Have you had any kind of preliminary talks with the Red Wings? Because I think we're all under the assumption you want to stay here and they want you to stay.
Yeah, for sure. I want to be here. Like I think it was an interview in New York. I said I want to play here as long as I can, and that hasn't changed one bit. But that's not a conversation for me to have. I leave that to my agent and Steve to have. And I've just kind of been focusing on keeping myself ready in case we do come back and play. And working as hard as I can and letting them take care of that side of it.
Robbie, I got to ask you this. I've been following all of the players' Instagrams, kind of seeing what everybody's doing at home during this quarantine. Where's your Instagram?
Yeah, I know. I got rid of all my social media a little bit ago. I'm gonna get back on there, once this is done. But as of right now, I just go on my dog's Instagram and that's where I kind of keep up with everything and throw some posts out about them.
I like that. The
Robbie,
dog
as you said,
Instagrams are the best anyway.
Do you care to share the Instagram, your dog's Instagram, so we can all start subscribing and keeping up with you every day?
Yeah, it's Huncho, HUNCHO 1_.
All right, great. I know Daniella
Huncho
wrote
1
that down.
Yeah, I'm already I'm already looking it up actually.
There you go. This whole interview is going to be bombarded with posts from your dog. I'm really kind of curious. The room does get along. You guys are right around the same age for the most part. Obviously, there's some veteran leadership on this team as well. Have you stayed in contact with him? I mean, are you talking to Tyler constantly, or do you have a team meeting per se, just to not only keep physically sharp with what you're doing, obviously working out, but to still keep engaged as a team?
Yeah, we have our group chat that we keep in touch with each other. A lot of talks with the NHLPA, and everyone's getting their opinions in and stuff like that. And then with guys like Bert, Larks, Mantha, and Bowie, we've been keeping in touch quite a bit. I've got on Xbox a few times with Tyler, and You know, it's always fun to keep up with them, and you know, it's definitely tough. You know, we're used to seeing each other every day, and now we're stuck with FaceTimes and texts.
Well, Robbie, we hope that is not the reality for too much longer. And we thank you so much for joining us today for Downtown Hockeytown. It was great to see you and great to catch up with you, and glad everything's going okay for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Downtown Hockeytown is brought to you by Labatt Blue Light, refreshing Canadian Pilsner. Visit your local retailer when safe to pick up some Labatt Blue Light. Thanks again to Robbie Fabbri for joining us for Downtown Hockeytown. Art, I got to ask you, it was great to hear from him, and it's also great to hear that he wants to be in Detroit. In your opinion, what do you see for the future for Robbie Fabbri? Is he going to be a Red Wing?
Yeah, I definitely think that, you know, Steve obviously traded for him. It was a great move, you know, nothing against Jacob De La Rose, who, you know, did well in St. Louis too. They're a different type of player, but the Red Wings need goal scoring. I mean, Kenny alluded to it in the mailbag segment, and, you know, he provided goals. So I look at him as being, you know, a top 6, top 9 forward at least, but definitely a top 6 forward, someone who can put the puck in the net. You know, we're talking about a former #1 pick of the St. Louis Blues. He's won a cup. You know, he's overcome a lot of adversity. So, you know, that's a good character guy, a guy that you want, guy that has talent, a high level scorer. And yeah, certainly I'm pretty sure. And that's why I asked the question to him, you know, and, you know, obviously with this pandemic going on right now, there's a lot of, everybody's kind of juggling a lot of balls up in the air, but, you know, I'm sure that once everything settles down and we have more of a direction to go in, or what the league is going to do, I'm pretty sure, you know, one of the first calls Steve is going to make, besides the Anthony Mantha's agent, is Robbie Fabray's, and trying to get those guys, Tyler too. You know, Tyler's unrestricted. So there's some work to be done, but I think the 3 gentlemen I just mentioned, they're definitely going to try to sign those guys to contract extensions. And you know, Robbie Fabry, you know, look at him there. He looks great in the red and white. You know, he's a very laid back guy, but real feisty. You kind of like those players. So it's kind of a little bit like Tyler Bertuzzi, probably a little bit more of a goal scorer, but both of those guys aren't, you know, really big dudes, but they play a lot bigger than they are. They go to the greasy areas, and you know, they score goals, and, you know, those are the type of guys you want on your team.
Right, Art. And you mentioned how much he's overcame when it comes to his injuries. He had 2 serious knee injuries that he's overcome, and he's proven that he can still be a great player. But it says a lot, like, when you can get along with a brand new team the way that he did. The morale in the locker room was good, and you can tell that they all really, really meshed well.
Right. Well, you know, Daniella, and this is the thing that I learned from covering professional sports over the years, is that the one thing that always amazed me, regardless of the sport, is when, after the game's over, if you're walking out to where the visiting team catches their bus, you know, there's family members and all that kind of stuff there, if they happen to be from Detroit in our case, or you know, Michigan, or, you know, out surrounding areas. But also opposing players go out and talk to each other. They all know each other. And that's what I was talking about with Robbie, with that pecking order. I mean, you know, Robbie Fabry has been playing against these guys since he's been a little boy. And, you know, each level you go up, you know, some people are cast to the wayside, and then, you know, but, you know, he knows who Dylan Larkin is. You know, he knows, you know, he talked about Bowie at the World Juniors, you know, Mantha at the Memorial Cup. So, you know, Anthony had 82 goals in 82 games. So he was the big, you know, big man on campus at that tournament. So, yeah, I mean, so it's easy to walk in a room where you share a skill set, an elite skill set, with very few people in the world. What are there? A little over 600 NHL players on a roster when they're all said and done. So that's a pretty exclusive club. It's so exclusive that they all know each other, and you know, they all come up through the ranks together. So and I think that's why he meshed so well. I mean, having Tyler here was huge. You know, and when Perlini came, you know, he and Dylan went back too to their days as teenagers. So you know, that's a good thing, but it's not a surprising thing. That happens more often than not. When a guy is traded to a team, even though he might not have played with these guys, he's well aware of them because he's either played against them or somewhere down the line they were teammates.
right? And we're hoping for a bright future here in Detroit for Robby Fabbri. And as promised, we've got Dan Dickerson on the line for our Brush Street Beat segment presented by our friends at McLaren. So let's bring in Dan. Dan, how are you doing today? How was your weekend?
Really good, thanks. How about you?
It was pretty good. I was hoping for a little bit of better weather now that we're in mid-May, but we've got some nice sunshine today, so I can't complain too much.
Took some nice pictures of the snow on our lawn when I went out this morning.
Oh, no, delete those. Well, Dan, let's get into talking some Tigers here. Last week, you did our headliner interview and you had Tigers Director of Amateur Scouting, Scott Place, with you. Art and I both thought it was really interesting to hear from him, especially when you get into the analytics and that whole side of baseball. What did you learn from talking to Scott last week?
I think a couple of things. Spencer Torkelson's at the top of everybody's list. You've got Asa Lacy and Austin Martin as well. Kind of the top three. And I just don't think there's any question. He's not going to tell us, of course. I don't think there's any question, though, that Spencer Torkelson's right at the top. And I thought it was interesting that he said that, he's not just a first baseman. A first baseman has not been drafted number one overall since Adrian Gonzalez back in, I think it was 2000. So it's very unusual to pick a right-handed hitting first baseman with the number one overall pick. But his point is he's athletic. He might actually be able to play third base, which I think is interesting. This isn't a guy you're just kind of sticking over there because he's got a good bat. This is a guy who's got a lot of talent. He's athletic. He's not tipping his hand, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't. I think everybody would be surprised if it wasn't Spencer Torkelson. Also, that this is a deep draft, Daniella. And unfortunately, it's a deep draft where the Tigers have the first pick every round, and it's going to be shortened to 10. Maybe even the reports this week were to 5 rounds. So instead of getting that first pick every round in a deep draft through at least 10 rounds or 15 or 40 rounds in a normal year, you're only going to get that for the first 5 rounds. And that's a blow. He didn't say that, but I mean, he was excited about getting the first pick through 10 rounds. But if it goes down to 5, that's a blow to the Tigers. But it is a deep draft. And you really get an appreciation for how much work these guys are doing, because they know that whether it's 5 or 10 rounds, there's going to be all those guys out there ready to sign with teams. They can only be offered $20,000. And so their preparation is just as deep as it would be in any other draft. They're going like they're drafting for 40 rounds because that big pool of, free agents, really, high schoolers and college kids are going to be out there after the either 5 or 10 rounds is done, and they've got to do their homework and be ready to aggressively move on some of those guys.
Dan, I think that's a great point. If you look at it, 40 rounds of a draft, I think at one time the draft was unlimited. If there was a team that just wanted to keep picking players, I think they could have. But 40 rounds, you're right. So I would imagine, with the 180th pick, the Detroit Tigers select Dan Dickerson. At least you were drafted. I never saw the light of day in the draft, but I have to say that the thing that I find interesting, as soon as this draft's over, Scott and his crew, they're looking at it. I would almost, it begins immediately. No sooner do you welcome the 5 or 10, however they decide, draft picks into the system and say, you're going to go to rookie ball in Lakeland and report, or, hopefully all that can happen. And then you're on the phone trying to recruit the other, in this case, let's say 35 guys that you thought you might have been able to draft. And, and there's going to be a lot of competition for these players. When you're slotted, it's a little bit easier to figure out, they might go for him, what our needs are. At this point, it's just going to be one big free-for-all.
It's going to be a big free-for-all. And your point about where do you assign the picks that you either make or the ones that you sign is obviously huge. There's still for all the proposals about what Major League Baseball might do, there's not a whole lot yet on what we're going to see in terms of a minor league season. So, and he said that will be a blow. I mean, that if it's not going to be a developmental year, the normal developmental year for, think of the guys in the lower levels, especially Riley Green and Parker Meadows, Cody Clemens, who had just made it to Double-A at the end of last year. This is a critical year for some, on the lower level guys who have a lot of promise, but you think first and foremost of Riley Green. It's a big year of development because this is a kid who, could be on his way to the major leagues in a normal situation by next year. So he is concerned about that. And that is going to be, the draft is going to take place as scheduled on June 10th. But then the question becomes, where do these guys go?
Dan, I have another question for you. It is Comerica Park's 20th anniversary this year, which seems kind of crazy. It feels like it's still a brand new ballpark. It doesn't feel like it's been 20 years already. But why don't you tell us some of your favorite memories that took place at Comerica Park?
I'd probably start with the first opening day, which I think people remember. They had to turn on the sprinklers to melt the snow to get that game played against Seattle.
Same thing we're doing now.
They probably wouldn't have had that game. If that hadn't been the first game at Comerica Park, they probably never would have played that game. I always start with that. But, there are some great moments along the way. Everybody, the postseason moments are the ones that, are just indelibly burned into my brain. Yes, of course, the Maglio home run in 2006 to clinch the ALCS against Oakland. But I think it's some of the moments leading up to that. Kenny Rogers coming back after the Tigers stole Game 2 in New York. You've got Maglio. I mean, that was the best part about the Maglio home run as we watch it, that it was a no-doubter. Thank goodness. When you're making a call like that, you don't want to miss it. And he left little doubt. I love that angle. I haven't seen that angle in a long time. What a great moment. You know what I remember about that moment especially? That Placido like a little kid rounding third, and the stadium, I mean, up in that booth, we're in between the lower and upper deck. It was shaking. I mean, you could feel the stadium shaking at that moment. And just the joy that touched off in downtown Detroit, the celebration that seemed to go on, I don't know, probably till the sun came up the next day, but just the joy in the ballpark and outside the ballpark is something I'll never forget. But just a couple of others from the Kenny Rogers game that preceded that in the ALDS, where he channeled, he's 41, right? And he's channeling, 26-year-old Kenny Rogers for one night against the Yankees. And he went 7 2/3 and was showing emotion, and the crowd was just completely into it. That was a great moment. I think of the run in that summer, the first winning season in 12 years. And when they were on a roll in midsummer, it just felt like they couldn't lose for about a 2-month period. And when Pudge Rodriguez hit that walk-off home run against the Indians in early August to get them to 74 and 36, and he wasn't a big home run hitter that year. And again, just crushes it to left field. I mean, that just gave you the feeling that, it was somebody every night coming up with a big hit. You got the feeling that, something special was going on. That place, that was a sold-out Comerica Park. That game right there is just a perfect encapsulation of what that summer at that moment was like. Sellout crowds, big hits from a different player, it seemed like every night, walk-off wins left and right for a 2-month period. That one always sticks out in my mind. That was a great, great moment.
Double D, I wanted to kind of piggyback on what you said. All those memories, I think up until that point, I was an old Tiger Stadium guy, sitting in the upper deck center field bleachers for $5 and screaming Lou or whatever. I love Tiger Stadium. How could you not love the old ballpark? But I think that those memories, that 2006 season, in my mind, made Comerica Park the Tigers ballpark. I guess I kind of accepted it. It had its own memories. It had its own history. It didn't have the 119 losses history anymore. You could see, this ballpark was going to be Detroit's ballpark. The torch had finally been passed from Tiger Stadium to Comerica Park. And that's what I really, really remember about that 2006 season was, and you eloquently stated it as you always do, Double D, those memories there. That was, that's definitely what I take from Comerica Park. And you're right, I can't believe it's 20 years old. It seems like they were just ripping up home plate at Tiger Stadium and taking it over there. And it's been there now for 20 years. Wow, that's great.
One more, Daniella, if I could.
Of course, go ahead.
Because it goes back to something that Ernie Harwell, I'd never done baseball when I got the job in 2000. I always say I came with the ballpark. I'd never done baseball before other than practice. So they got off to a 9-23 start that first year. And I remember asking Ernie just kind of, how do you do this when your team's no good? And that team was supposed to be certainly better because they traded for Juan Gonzalez and made some other big moves going into 2000. And he said, just remember, somebody's always listening to every game. And you might see a great game between two bad teams. You might see something you've never seen before. You might see a great individual effort. And it was just a good reminder that, a great moment's a great moment, no matter what the record is, no matter where you are in the standings. So I always think of the Brandon Inge home run against the Angels, 2003. The Tigers had lost 11 in a row. There was something like 60 games under the 500 mark. Brandon Inge is hitting under 200. He's facing Troy Percival, who at that point in his career had given up something like 2 runs in 46 innings against the Tigers in his career. Dominant. Man on, down 10-9, bottom of the ninth. And Brandon Inge hits a walk-off home run, touching off, this huge celebration at home. And I'm sure some people who weren't around are like, what are they celebrating for? No, you got to understand, a great moment's a great moment. And that was a perfect reminder. These guys worked so hard. They were not getting rewarded for any of their hard work. And that was a moment to celebrate. And I always remember that just because it was just one of those little moments that I think we all love about baseball.
Daniella,
that is a
Double
great
D
story.
made remember something. When they traded for Juan Gonzalez, who was one of the premier players in baseball at that time, one of the best hitters,
Yes.
and we're all really, really happy. We're all psyched up. Oh, wow, Juan Gonzalez. And I think the question, you're going to remember this, Double D, there was a question to him about, well, will you be buying a house in Detroit? And no sooner was that question asked that he was like, apartment, no, apartment. And I think we all took that as, yeah, he's really happy to be here. That's what I remember about Juan Gonzalez is Juan Apartment Gonzalez. That's one of those moments that really
That's awesome. And Dan, let's talk a little bit about Jim Leyland. We're actually going to have him join us for the headliner interview with Art in just a little bit, but he was obviously a huge part of the Tigers' success in the turnaround in 2006, all the way up until he retired in 2013, and he still is a part of the Tigers organization. Just talk about the impact that he had on the Tigers.
He never wants credit for changing the attitude because it was obviously a group effort, but there's no question that Jim Leyland changed the attitude of this team. And it wasn't that they didn't. He always makes a point, hey, we had talent. And he said, for whatever reason, it just didn't seem like they knew how to win. They didn't know how to take the field like winners. And yes, it was that early season explosion after a game when they, as he said, they looked like they were on the plane to the West Coast and didn't care if they won or lost that day. That was a turning point. There's no question about it. I think there were a couple of other private moments behind closed doors early on where he just made it very clear. We are going to play, no matter what the score is, we're going to play hard to the very end. We're going to play all 9 innings hard. And it sounds so basic, but he just felt like that was a lesson they had to learn. And he said, his belief was once you had the veterans in that clubhouse, you got them. They believe in your message. They believe in how you want to go about doing things. Once you have that, then you've got something. And he felt like after that blow up, he had something because he felt like the team got what he was talking about, understood that what might have worked a couple of years ago is not going to work this year. This is what I expect. And he did. He instilled a winning attitude, whatever you want to call it, just made them understand this is what if you want to win, this is what you have to do. Because the guys on that team had been on, even after the 119 loss season, they'd still lost 90 games each of the next 2 years. So there was that learning curve. And even though they went out and lost the first game on the West Coast trip, I think they won 6 or 7 in a row after that. And they went on a roll. They went 28-7 after that. And that's really when things began to turn around. But he put his stamp, that personality, that unique personality, the likes of which we may never see again in baseball. He put that stamp on that team. And no question, launched probably the best, when you think about it, the best arguably 11-year period, 12-year period in Tiger franchise history. Whereas my friend Tom Hamilton with the Indians said, think about it, every year, even if they didn't have a winning record, every year for that 12-year period, they went to spring training expecting that they could win the division. And he said, that's a pretty good stretch of success. Most of that under Jim Leyland.
I also think too, something, Dan, that Jim Leyland brought. I mean, he was drafted by the Tigers. I think the first 18 years of his professional baseball career was in the Tigers organization, either as a player or as a manager. And I think when he came back, he had pride in the uniform. He was always a Tiger deep down in his heart, regardless if he was at Pittsburgh or the Colorado, or he won a championship with the Marlins. And I think when he walked in, he wanted to put that uniform on. That Old English D meant something to him. And I also think that he was able to bring that to a group of guys, because, the Tigers had traded for guys, Pudge was a Ranger, or Ordonez was a White Sox. But when he came in and you saw how he embraced that uniform and what it meant for him to put that uniform on, I think that really translated to the team as well.
Yeah, and Daniella, I just think one of the other things, that personality, he had a unique way of making sure that I think he wanted to touch base with every player on his team every day. This is how a manager gets the most out of his players, right? By connecting with them on a certain level, whether it's stopping by his locker to tell a joke, make a remark about a hat that a guy might have that he bought. I remember one day with Fernando Rodney, he came walking in the clubhouse, which is almost empty. He had a catalog of clothing, and he's like, he's a sharp dresser. Fernando, this hat, this got you written all over it. It might be a joke that he would tell when he would make his little daily trip into the outfield, around the batting cage. He'd start there, and then he'd go in the outfield. And, if he had a pointed message he wanted to deliver, he'd go out and he'd deliver it just standing next to a guy. Nobody in the ballpark would know that maybe he was delivering a very pointed message about something he saw last night. Or maybe he was just connecting with a guy because he wanted to make sure that he said at least a hello, I think, to every player every day. And that's a gift, to be able to connect with players of a very different generation. But he worked at it, and that was kind of the special sauce, the magic sauce, if you will, for Jim Leyland.
I'm very excited to hear what he has to say about his time with the Tigers and everything else that we talked to him about for our headliner interview. But Dan, I want to ask you, we've got all of these classic games. The 2006 season is airing on Fox Sports Detroit right now. And last night was the game that we were talking about earlier against Chicago. And then tonight, we've got the Indians. It's 8-5-06. And I'm pretty sure that is the Pudge walk-off home run that you were talking about. So have you been keeping up with these games and kind of reliving the memories?
I have. It's painful sometimes to watch just because I miss baseball so much. But I'm really glad you put that back up there, because that is a game I tape a lot of things. I don't always watch them, but I will absolutely record that game and watch it, because I want to feel that energy that was in the ballpark that night. I mean, it really was something, and that's a pretty good list of games you just put up there.
Definitely. Fox Sports Detroit has been awesome in giving us some of the sports that we're missing right now, and these baseball games are really exciting. I know Art has been keeping up with them as well.
Well, you bet I have. I mean, I live through every pitch. That's why I'm glad that there's some time in between pitches. So I think it's prevented a stroke on many occasions. But I mean, I love baseball. I've said this till I'm Tigers blue in the face. The Tigers are Detroit's oldest professional team. They're a charter member of the American League. They've been around since 1901. Actually, they had a National League team that won a national championship. So baseball's been played here for a long, long time. And I can remember telling some of the guys when the Tigers were struggling, going into the clubhouse and letting them know that Detroit really is a baseball city. You may not think it because they're struggling and, we're going through some tough economic times and disposable income might not be where everybody can, go to the ballpark. But let me tell you, and I think Dan just brought it up, in 2006, I think everybody knew what type of baseball city Detroit really is. I mean, the Tigers are a beloved franchise. It's an iconic logo. They've had iconic players. And that's why when you watch these games, these classic Tiger games, I don't know, for me, as soon as the game's over, I have to go outside with my mask on and run around the block because I'm just so and I'm not exaggerating, man. I am so into it. Like when Pudge hits that home run tonight, hey, it's anticlimactic. Dan already brought it up. That's doesn't get much better than a walk-off. And if Pudge Rodriguez, Hall of Famer, boom, I'm outside running a couple of laps.
And one of those other games, Daniella, is that you notice you notice that Kansas City game on the 24th, that's, I'm pretty sure, the clinching game. And then it leads to what happened the next weekend. How many of us, raise your hand, how many of us think the Tigers were Central Division champions that year? I still think of them as Central Division champions that year. So that's the clinching game. And then the next weekend, the Tigers 14-1 against the Royals. All they have to do is win one game at home against the Royals and get swept by the Royals the next weekend, which set up the dramatics of that series against the Yankees, that Kenny Rogers game coming up on Thursday. Or I'm sorry, that's game 2 in New York. But I think that's one of the amazing things is that the Kansas City sweep ended up locking in one of the great, after losing game 1, 7-game win streaks of any postseason when the Tigers then rolled over the Yankees and the that's in 2012, I think, and then the Oakland A's and the ALCS. That's great stuff, though.
Yeah.
Those postseason games, something else.
Definitely. And it's so great, like I said, to be able to relive all of them, especially during this time when we don't have the live sports. So I will definitely be watching. And Dan, as always, thank you so much for joining us. No doubt that you will be back very soon.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Take care, guys.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, Dan.
We've still got a lot more coming up in today's show. Thank you to our friends at McLaren for bringing us Brush Street Beat this week and every week on the Word on Woodward. Now, let's get into our headliner, when I'm going to toss it over to Art for this one.
Thank you, Daniella. Now time for the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite. And let's bring in special assistant to the general manager, Al Avila, and former Tigers manager, longtime Major League manager. And that, of course, is Jim Leland. Jim, thanks for joining us on the headliner today. I wanted to go back to the very beginning for you because I have always considered you a Tiger, even though you were in Pittsburgh. And I know that you were Tony La Russa's third base coach as a White Sox. I've always equated you with the Detroit Tigers. So I want to go back to September of 1963 when a young man from Perrysburg, Ohio, signed with the Tigers. What was that day like? Because I think from that moment on, you've always been a Tiger, and maybe I'm overstating it.
Well, I think, it was a big thrill, obviously. I was actually a Cleveland Indians fan growing up, but in those days, I signed before they had the baseball draft, so you could sign with anybody. I really wasn't in demand by too many teams. So, it was just a big thrill to sign with Detroit. And, I was a little gullible. When I signed with them, I thought, geez, I'm going to play in the big leagues. And it didn't take me very long to figure out I wasn't going to. When I got to spring training and saw all the competition, I realized at a very early point in my career that I was not going to make it as a player. But as you say, I went on to spend 18 consecutive years with the Detroit Tigers, 7 as a player or player coach, and then I managed for them 11 years. So I was with the Detroit Tigers 18 straight years to start out my professional career.
Well, that's a great story. I want to go back to, as corny as this sounds, when you were named Tigers manager, on October 4th, 2005. And you had obviously had an illustrious career, won a world championship with the Marlins, our legend as Pittsburgh Pirate manager. Did you feel that my career has now come full circle, that I was meant to be in the Old English D managing this ball club?
Yeah, I did. I really did. It was really exciting for me. I don't know if I'd have been that much excited about maybe taking another team at that point, although I felt like I was ready to come back to manage after being out 6 years. But it just kind of fell in place, and I thought, it took me a long time, but I finally I'm going to get the opportunity to manage the Tigers. When I was there, obviously Sparky Anderson was there, so I certainly wasn't going to replace him. And so I had to wait a long time. But when Dave Dombrowski called me and asked me to come to Detroit to interview me, I was absolutely thrilled. I felt like my baseball career had really come full cycle. And, this was a job. I never really thought about managing the Tigers when I first started managing the minor leagues. But I did think about managing the Tigers when I got to Evansville after a couple of years. I thought, I'd like to manage the big leagues. It'd be a thrill to manage the Tigers. But obviously, they had one of the greatest managers of all time in the position at that time, so I wasn't going to get that opportunity. So I eventually moved on to go with the White Sox, and then some opportunities as far as managing opened up for me.
You look at taking the club over for the 2006 season. In 2003, obviously, the Tigers struggled. They set the American League record for losses with 119, but from that point on, they had acquired some talent. And you just mentioned Sparky Anderson. In that 2006 season, Sparky used to say, I know what kind of club I have at the 40-game mark. I can tell you if we're going to be contending, if we're not. I just get that feeling. Was there a moment in 2006 where it came to you that not only are this is a pretty good ball club. We're not only above 500. This is a team that could actually make some noise during the season.
I actually felt that way in spring training, to be honest with you. I got to know the players. We started to develop a relationship. I think we instilled some confidence in those players that were talented players. Weren't quite sure how to win yet. I think they were a little shy about it. They weren't really quite ready to take that step forward, maybe as an entire team. But there was plenty of talent on that team, and I felt like we put some more talent in that team when we added Verlander and Zamaya, and I think the players saw that, and I think the energy started to really pick up in spring training, and I think the players started to actually get some confidence in spring training, and then we got off to a good start. Somebody said, were you surprised you got off to a good start? I said, no, I was not. I thought we would get off to a good start. I thought we were a very talented team, and I thought we had an opportunity to do something. I won't say over the winter before I went to my first spring training with it, but once I got into spring training and started talking with the players and dealing with the players and listening to the players and watching them perform, I felt really good going into the 2006 season. Now, did I know we were going to go to the World Series? No, I did not. But I thought that we would have a really good year, and I thought that could be a team that started to turn around in Detroit. And as it turned out, it was definitely the team that turned baseball around in Detroit.
Well, they certainly did. Yeah, you mentioned Justin Verlander and Joel Zamaya. They were both rookie pitchers. Was it a difficult sell for you to go to Dave Dombrowski, who obviously loved power arms? He drafted enough here in Detroit. But was it difficult for you to say, hey, I want to take these two young pitchers with me north to Detroit?
When I took the job, I asked Dave, I said, are you going to let me take the guys I want to take? He said, well, within reason. So when we talked about that early in the spring training, he said, well, I'm not quite sure. I told him I wanted those guys. He said, well, we'll see. He said, I'm not quite sure because you don't know what they're going to do. And I remember saying, no, I don't know what they're going to do for sure, but I do know what the guys that we've had in the past are going to do, and it hadn't been too good for the last 13 years here. So I think let's try something new because I'm a big believer in talent, and those guys had talent, and I believe in that. I believe in the talent over the experience. Now, if you got both, that's great. Obviously, it's better. But when you have talent like that, that's going to surface. That's going to get the job done for the most part. So I was very confident about it. Dave was great about it. He agreed 100% as the spring went on that those guys should be on the team. And I think that, we really had a good bullpen. I think the Tigers have been accused of not having a very good bullpen most of those years. But that particular year, we had Todd Jones, a really good, outstanding veteran closer. We had Fernando Rodney, who's still pitching and been really a workhorse. We had Grilly, who took good innings for us, Jamie Walker, Zamaya. I mean, that was really a good bullpen. And I think Zamaya kind of was the was kind of the standout in that bullpen, even though he wasn't the closer or anything. But people oohed and awed when he came in the game. I think he gave some electricity to the crowd because of the 100-mile-an-hour fastball plus at times. So it was all. And Verlander was throwing 99, 100, and with good breaking ball and a changeup. So I think those guys really instilled some energy, not only in our players, but in our crowd and in the city of Detroit.
Jim, all week, Fox Sports Detroit is featuring games from the 2006 season, their Tiger series. And I know they're going to have the Cubs. They're having the clinching game in 2006 against Kansas City. But what I'm really kind of curious about is that I could just tell by the way you reacted after game one that you kind of knew that your team was poised and ready to defeat the vaunted Yankees.
I think you're probably right. People in New York didn't expect that from the Tigers. But I think, especially after we lost game one, I think they were probably on cruise control, the fans in New York and everything. And I think maybe one of the best things that were happening is we got rained out the next night. And we came back and beat them in a day game. I remember Jamie Walker getting a double play ball off Cano, I think in the sixth inning, the game at Verlander started. And when we won that game in New York, I think it just, our chest swelled a little bit. And I think they thought, okay, we'll go to Detroit. We'll end this thing. But our guys were pumped up. And I think that it's funny because when I took the job in Detroit in 2005, I wrote the team a letter. And I mentioned something about, I want our team, I don't want us cocky or arrogant or anything, but I want our team to take the field with a little swagger, like we're pretty good, and not be half stepping out on the field. Let's get after it. Let's stick our chest out and let's go out and let people know that we're a good team and we got a chance to win. And I wanted that. I thought I wanted that bounce in our step, and I think our guys showed that. And I think being that we played the Yankees, it happened to be that we played them in the playoffs. It kind of came to pass what happened, really, to be honest with you. And it was and the other thing is it was a big thrill for us because the Yankees, let's face it, they've always kind of been the measuring stick of excellence and probably still are. But, so to defeat them in the first round of the playoffs, and we went on obviously to win 7 straight playoff games. And then, of course, did not perform well in the World Series.
Right. I want to go to the American League Championship Series against Oakland. Obviously, the moment that stands out, I mean, you swept the A's, and, Justin Verlander was doing his thing and was establishing himself as a great postseason pitcher in the playoffs at that point. But Maglio Ordonez's home run in Game 4, that is one of those moments that will live in Tigers history. I could have just imagined what was going through your mind when you realized, my gosh, this club that only a couple of seasons before was not very good is suddenly in the World Series.
The electricity in the crowd that day when Maglio hit the home run was absolutely unbelievable. But I think as the season went on, that electricity picked up in the communities, the outlying communities, Detroit. Everywhere you went, people were wearing a Tiger hat, a Tiger jersey, a sweatshirt, some type of Tiger, memorabilia. So it was picking up all along the way. And that just kind of climaxed it. I wish we'd have waited another couple of weeks and got the World Series, because that would have been even more unbelievable. But I think Maglio's home run, I don't think I've ever seen a stadium more electric than Comerica Park was that day when Maglio hit the home run off Houston Street. I think it was just unbelievable. It was a relief, but I think it was, we were all pumped up because we had accomplished something. We felt like going into the season, we'd be good. We didn't know we'd get that far, but as it went on, we started to believe in ourselves more. And I think that kind of, put the exclamation point on it.
I want to go to the 2020 Tigers. I know that you were down in spring training. Everything is on pause right now. Do you see maybe some similarities to the 2020 team, or what the Tigers are trying to do right now and what they did after the 2003 season, that there is, the light at the end of the tunnel here?
Well, I don't think there's any question that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, back then they went out and got Pudge Rodriguez and Maglio Ordonez. So we're not in that mode right now. We're more in the development mode and getting the players that we have better. And then when we feel we're at that point, like, we picked up Crone this year and Scoops this year. So, we're definitely making progress. But I think when the right time comes, I think Chris was going to step up and go out and try to put the finishing touches on it. So it's a little bit the same, but yet it's a little bit different. I think we have I think we have more power arm pitching prospects than we did when I came in 2006. I mean, we had Verlander and Zabaya, but not a whole lot else at the time. So I think right now we have a core of young pitching prospects that are better than when I came. What we need to do is we need to have a few more impact players. The Riley Green is a young kid, but he's down pretty low right now, but I understand that. But I wish we had a few more really impact bats at the higher levels. We got some good players. I don't want to sound like I'm being critical because I'm not. We got some good players, but I'm talking about a big difference maker, like the infusion of a Miguel Cabrera coming up to the big leagues, or a Mike Trout. We don't really have that kind of guy right now. I think we could in the future, and depending on a draft this year, who knows what's going to happen. But I think we do need a couple more position players that are really impact bats, and actually maybe even two-way players. And what I mean by that as an impact bat, but also a good defensive player. So I love two-way players. I love players that could, produce offensively, but I also love players that could play defense and play it good. So we need a few more of those, but we're really on the right track. I don't think there's any question about that. I think, the Illises have always showed that they'll step up when the time comes if they think the time is right. I think we're getting closer to that. Are we there right this minute? No, but I think we're getting a lot closer.
Jim, my final question for you is, obviously a sad note, but I know that you go back with Mr. Tiger, Al Kaline, since 1964. His recent passing, I think we've all, become reflective. And, I look back, I don't remember my whole childhood was Al Kaline. And I'm just kind of curious, maybe your thoughts and memories of Mr. Tiger.
Well, I had dinner with him. I was fortunate to have dinner with him a couple of nights before he went home from spring training this year. And I felt like deep inside, I had this feeling that he was almost saying goodbye. And I think he was. We had a wonderful dinner. He and his wife, Louise, and I had dinner in Lakeland, and we just laughed and talked about old times and everything. And when we left that night, he said, "Give me a hug, Jim." And I gave him a hug. He said, "Thanks for being my friend all these years." And I had a weird feeling when I went back to my room. I thought, this almost sounded like goodbye, and I think it probably was. So, everybody called him Mr. Tiger. Like I said, I called him Mr. Gentleman. He was a gentleman on and off the field. He was a fierce competitor. He is Mr. Tiger. There's no question about it. And he will forever be remembered as Mr. Tiger, which I think is a good thing. So, and I think he's being acknowledged. He's on the wall there in Detroit, statue, whatever it may be. So, Al was just a wonderful guy and a wonderful ball player.
Yeah, he certainly was. On that note, Jim, I just want to say thank you for joining us on the Headliner. I really appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I just want to say just thank you for everything that you've done for this Tiger organization over the years. All the way back to when you signed in 1963 till today. You're truly a Tiger, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jim.
Well, I appreciate the Tigers having me. I really enjoyed it in Detroit. Thank you.
There you have it. That is Jim Leyland on the Headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Daniella, what can you say? Jim and Leyland, what a gentleman on and off the field.
Art, he really is great. And I think we even learned that too from talking to Dan Dickerson when he said that Jim Leyland doesn't like to take credit for the Tigers turnaround because it is a team effort. But Jim Leyland was such a huge part of that. And it just speaks to who he is, that he doesn't really want to take credit for it. But he did an amazing, amazing thing as the Tigers manager.
Well, he certainly did. I think, again, with Double D expounded on it, and he's absolutely correct. Jim Leyland went out of his way to always talk to each and every player. And when you really look at the successful coaches in any sport, they have a way of communicating with each individual player. And, some guys might need the kick in the pants where other guys need to be coddled a little bit, but they have to be part psychologists. And I think what Jim Leyland did, and I think what his secret was, is that he never wanted to show a player up or embarrass them. If he had something to say, he usually took them out to the outfield and would talk to them during batting practice or something, kind of one-on-one where nobody had any idea what was going on. So if there was a disagreement or if he had to tell a player something, he respected them enough where he wanted to face them man to man, but in an environment where nobody really knew what exactly, for all they know, they could have been talking about, their favorite TV show or something. But I think you can tell. I don't know. Something about Jim Leland, my whole life, I've always considered him a Tiger. I don't know from when I was a little boy and I saw a clip from spring training where he was interviewed, but he just glowed about putting on the jersey and being a Tiger. And it always stuck with me. Always, I joke around my buddies when he was a manager of Pittsburgh, the Pirates were one of my favorite teams, not because I was a big Pittsburgh Pirate fan, but because of Jim Leland, because I knew that he was deep down, he was a Tiger. And I think you can just see, wonderful stories, the Al Kaline story, I really have thought about that since he told me it. It's, it makes you reflective and you think about meetings with, whether it be a friend or a relative, where in their own way, they were saying goodbye to you. You probably, in my case, didn't really catch on till after the fact. And for him to go home or go back to his room and sit in bed and think, that could have been the last time. And he was absolutely right. So, a sad moment, maybe bittersweet, but, I'm certainly glad that Al definitely wanted to say something to him and he got that opportunity. So that's a good thing.
Definitely. Jim Leland shared some great stories there. So a big thank you to him for joining the show. Now let's get into Let's Socialize, presented by AAA. And we're going to bring in Carley again. Carley, I know that you've been all over the social media today. What do you got for us?
All right. First question. Well, questions, I should say, are for Art. Steel Gots One Leg from Twitch asked, would the Detroit Red Wings ever look to try and get AA, Gus Nyquist, or Mike Green back in the future? And he also wants to know after that, when will we see Giovanni Smith wearing the winged wheel? I knew you'd love answering that one, so I had to make sure I included it.
Yeah, no doubt, Carly. Giovanni's one of my guys. He's one of our bloggers, and actually he's going to have a blog coming out very, very soon this week. First of all, I am under the impression that if Ken Holland gave up 2 second-round picks for Andreas Athanasiou, that he's not going to be seeing the red and white anytime soon. I don't think there was any animosity. I think Steve Yzerman liked him. I think he liked him as a person. So, this was just a hockey trade. I don't see that happening. Gus Nyquist, you never know. If they need a veteran, who's scoring goals and can set guys up, depending on where the team is at, I think it would be a short-term deal, or maybe somebody that they add at the trade deadline in case of injury, something to happen. That's a possibility. I don't think it's a big possibility. I really don't. But if that scenario plays out, maybe something like that. As far as Mike Green goes, whom is absolutely just a great, great human being. Mike Green is definitely, he adapted to Detroit. I say this a lot. He might be from Calgary, Alberta, but he has a Detroit soul. Mike Green is one of those guys. I just think where his age is at, with the influx of young defensive talent that the Red Wings now have, I think it's unlikely that Mike Green comes back to the Red Wings. Again, maybe injuries or something, or that there's a void that Mike Green could fill. I think Steve would possibly consider it. I actually don't see that happening. And then as far as Giovanni Smith making the team, I'm rooting for him, and I know he wants to. I would not be surprised if he makes the club next year on the fourth line and stays. I think his audition up here in Detroit was really impressive. He when he possesses the puck in the attacking zone, he keeps the puck and he goes right to the net. He's a big man. He's an agitator. One of my favorite moments in all of last season for the Red Wings, even though it's on pause, but this will still, once they resume the season, it'll still be one of my favorite moments, was the way he was able to get into Drew Doughty's head. Drew Doughty spent the whole game when the Kings were in town, like with Giovanni Smith, talking to him, pushing him, going to the bench, shaking his head, kind of laughing, enjoying it in a weird way. And I remember Jeff Blashill saying, if Drew Doughty is more concerned about Giovanni Smith, then Giovanni Smith is doing his job. And I bring that up with Giovanni all the time when I talk to him. So, that kid, he's young too. We forget how young Giovanni is. He's a young man. But I think he has a real good shot at making the Red Wings next year as a fourth liner, and somebody who brings energy, a physicality, and he does have some offensive skill. The couple of goals that he scored and a couple of goals that he scored this year that weren't credited to him, he has some nice players in front of that net and tipped in too. So there's my answer for you. I think though that's how it's going to play out.
We know you love Giovanni Smith, and we are hoping to see him in that winged wheel jersey as well. Second question is for Daniella. Will we see something done for Al, Mr. Tiger Kaline, when we get back to play?
I think for sure. I think the Tigers are going to do something for Al Kaline as soon as they can. Like that question said, he's Mr. Tiger, and all the stories that we hear about Al Kaline and his impact on the organization and really his impact on everyone he met on a personal level. He wasn't just a baseball player, and he wasn't just looked at as a baseball role model. He was a life role model, gave great advice, and was super, super involved all the way up until the end. So I think there is no doubt that the Tigers are going to do something for him this season, but that's going to be a surprise to all of us once baseball resumes.
Exactly. A great guy. And finally, another question for you, Art. Hey, it's Common Gamer wants to know, with all the cap space cleared up, how do you see Steve Yzerman going about the free agency?
First of all, they're going to get a veteran goaltender. They're going to get a goalie. They're going to sign a goalie, whether to compete or be the backup to Jonathan Bernier, who's proven that he can handle the workload of a number one netminder. I think he's proven that this year. He's been absolutely outstanding since December on. Bernier is one of the leaders statistically in goaltending in the NHL on a team that we obviously know was struggling. I think that whomever Steve signs, and I think they're going to try to get two quality veteran defenseman. I think it's Eric Gustafsson of Calgary that they're looking at. A guy I've always liked, but this is it's never going to happen. I like Zach Bogosian. I would take a flyer on him. But I've always liked him as a player when he was with Winnipeg and then traded to Buffalo. But whomever they draft, a lot is going to be predicated on the draft. Where they're slotted, they're going to go for scoring. I really think they're going to go for scoring. And, if Jamie Drysdale is there and they fall to 4, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they do, maybe they go with a puck-moving defenseman who's a legitimate 1 or 2. But I think whomever they get is going to be short-term. Steve's probably most likely would like to sign him for a year, but 2-year deals, no more than 2 years. And when Steve starts signing free agents and acquiring guys and signing them to long-term contracts that aren't a Mantha or a Fabri or a Bertuzzi, guys that they're in the system, guys that the Red Wings drafted. Obviously, in Fabri's case, he was traded for. But that's when you know that the Red Wings, in Steve's mind, are ready to make their mark. Because he's not going to give any free agent contracts to anybody until that aren't no long-term deals, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, if he can get a quality forward who can score and, get some defensive help, I think that'll be it. But without question, the number one priority in free agency for the Red Wings, I would think, is a veteran goaltender.
We're going to get Carley back in just a second here, everybody. But Art, just a little follow-up for you on that one. I know that there's been a lot of rumors flying around, and I want to emphasize that it's rumors about Torrey Krug possibly coming back to Detroit. What were your thoughts on that rumor, and kind of, do you think that's even a possibility?
Well, it was really interesting. Tom Anastas is a really good friend of mine, the former MSU hockey coach. And I can remember after Torrey left, and became a Boston Bruin, signed through free agency, I said, Tom, how are the Spartans going to be this year? And he kind of laughed and chuckled. And I'll never forget it. He said, people are going to find out just how great a player Torrey Krug really is. He laughed, which was true. I can't see Torrey Krug leaving Boston. I know he's a state of Michigan guy. He's from Livonia like myself. The family, lifelong Red Wing fans. Obviously, they're Bruin fans now. He's a power play specialist. He's one of the best power play point guys, one of the best defensemen on the power play in the league. where the Bruins are at and where the Red Wings are at, even though I'm sure it would mean something to him to wear the winged wheel, to wear the red and white, I can't see that happening at this point. Now, I know it's talking out of both sides of my mouth. I just said that perhaps Steve's not going to sign long-term contracts. I think he would think long and hard about it if Torrey Krug and he could work out some sort of deal. But I get the feeling that Torrey Krug is probably going to end up staying in Boston just because of where that team is at and the chance to win a Stanley Cup, because, he's certainly still a young man, but in hockey years, which are like dog years, he's getting up there in age a little bit.
It definitely will be an interesting situation for the Red Wings when it comes to signing free agents and even the draft. It's going to be a fun couple of months there when we get to see all of that play out. But all right, let's talk about something fun that happened today. And I know Carley was going to talk about this. We're still working on getting her back, and she's got more for us. But we've got right here, look at that, Jacoby Jones, welcoming a baby girl, and her name is Alaya. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Naomi Alaya. And she made her entrance, and very, very cute. That's always sweet news, and I hope that him and his wife and everybody's doing very, very well. The baby looks absolutely beautiful, and I am kind of jealous of her little bow. I think I might have to get one that matches that. Maybe you too, Art.
Well, hopefully on Thursday's show, Daniella, you'll have a matching bow. I'm glad that Jacoby didn't go down the road that some people make and name his daughter Jacobarella or something like that.
Jacobarella.
Congratulations.
There you go.
It's an inside joke for me. But anyway, yeah, congratulations to Jacoby, daughter, and that's just terrific news.
And we had the big Blue Angels flyover today as well. And I didn't actually get to see it from where I live. I'm a little bit on the outskirts, but I know they flew over Detroit and a lot of Southeast Michigan to honor the healthcare workers. And Art, we've been talking about this since day one of the Word on Woodward, how important those people are to us right now.
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, what a great thing for the Blue Angels to do. What a talented group they are. I mean, what they do in those airplanes is incredible. But yeah, it was great. Being here in Livonia, I have not seen I was looking for the Blue Angels, and I thought a few times maybe they were flying over, but it was just my neighbor using his lawnmower. So, and a lot. But I was able to dream though, Daniella. To me, guys cutting his lawn, I'm thinking, hey, it's outside. That's just me though. Your mind plays tricks when you've been cooped up for a while.
Hey, my neighbor has been mowing his lawn for most of the show. And I'm telling you, it's a really small yard. So I don't know why it's taken him so long. He might just be getting bored. But I was kind of thinking the same thing. I heard it earlier. I'm like, oh, wait, what's that? No, just the lawnmower. So I'm in the same boat as you are.
You know what? He's probably cutting it says, oh, no. He keeps lowering the blade. So by the time the show's over today, when you walk outside, it's going to be nothing but dirt. Going to cut all the blades of grass off completely.
Well, that's what we've got for our Let's Socialize segment today. Carley, I know that we're having some technical difficulties, but thank you so much for leading this segment as always and taking some fan questions for us. And a big thank you to our friends at AAA that they say thank you with free roadside assistance for first responders and healthcare workers fighting to defeat COVID-19. You protect us by going to work every day. Let AAA protect you on the way there and back. And guys, we have come to the end of our show for today. Art, it's been a pleasure working with you as always. And I know that you and I both are going to be tuning into some of these 2006 Tigers games on Fox Sports Detroit.
Oh, you bet you are. That's the only way I get a workout is after these games. I'm so excited that I have to, run off some energy. Yeah, I definitely will be watching them. And, it's always a pleasure, Daniella. I mean, today's show was an interesting one to say the least. I thought our guests were, they always bring it. And, just kudos to you, to Carley and to our guys behind the scenes. Cause today was a bit of a challenge, and I salute you. Way to go, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys so much that are watching too and bearing with us when we do have a little bit of technical difficulties. It happens sometimes when we're doing a show like this, but we're doing our best to bring you the most quality show that we can. And we're doing good. I think we're doing pretty good, right, Art?
Yeah, I think we are doing real well. And, it's a lot of fun to do. And I can't believe that, after Thursday's show, we would have been doing this for a month already. It just really flies quickly. It's a lot of fun. And, the guests have been fabulous. And, this whole crew, again, I cannot stress the people behind the scenes, really. I know we talk about the frontline workers and the healthcare workers, and obviously, they're doing a tremendous job. But the people that put this show together, I'm not equating it with healthcare workers. They're not, they're kind of saving my life, I guess. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it takes a lot of people, takes a lot of effort, and the people that we have working on this show are tip top. They're the best, and I really, really want to acknowledge that and thank them.
I also want to acknowledge them too. They got to deal with us, so they're really working hard too. And Art, you mentioned thanking our healthcare workers again, and today is International Nurses Day, so I want to extend one more thank you to all of those nurses out there fighting the front lines. We really, really appreciate you, and we hope that you all are staying safe and healthy and stay strong during this time, because we will all get through this. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Word on Woodward today, and we will see you guys on Thursday at noon.